I'm out early doors for my photo walk with Sir Barkalot. Come on, pups. Importantly, we're making the walk before the sun really goes to town. We're in the middle of a heat wave, which in terms of the UK means it's raining tomorrow. Although I'm being careful not to be too flippant, because not everybody likes this weather, particularly, I can't say this word without sticking an extra L in, particularly, dogs, no. Especially dogs with thicker coats like Sir Barkalot. And of course they're pads on the paths, the sidewalks. Careful, Neil, you'll get told off for being not English enough. The paths that you walk along. The amount of dog owners I see at, 2 in the afternoon on a really sunny day, walking their dogs. Really, as a dog walker close to me that I see quite regularly says, dog owners that do that should be made to wear a fur coat and walk barefoot and appreciate what it feels like. On that note, I met a real-life Maori haka teacher the other day at a wedding. I know, these weddings, Neil, you're going to, are throwing up a few quite nice surprises at the moment, aren't they? Yes, they are. And it came home to me about this dog with pads thing in the middle of a day when after they'd done their haka, which was amazing. Story for another day. Maybe I'll tell it on the extra mile, actually. After they'd done it, there were 3 of them. I said, should we go and get some pictures outside with the bride and groom? And they said, yeah, lovely idea. Walked out to the front of the venue, and of course they were in bare feet, and they were dancing around like anybody's business. But it occurred to me, I thought, oh, you poor old things, brought you out onto this tarmac, and there you are with bare feet in the middle of the heat. What are you looking at, pups? He's got a scent. Right, let me get a sketchbook image to start the show. Sun coming up, path ahead, nothing particularly special. 1300 shutter speed, 4.5, f4.5, ISO 160, and there we go. A sketchbook picture to start the walk.
It was very interactive, this journey for me, with Twitter and many of the suggestions of places to go, what people said online, and that often involved pubs. But I had to be quite Puritan about it because I needed to cover 25 kilometers each day, and I allowed about 3 hours of photography each day. And if the photography was inspiring, I would make up the time by walking at night with a head torch.
The foreword.
There's something quietly profound about walking. You don't say, Sherlock. You've been doing this walking and photographing podcast for nearly 500 episodes. You've only just worked that out. Well, my guest today, Quintin Lake, he knows all about the power of walking because he's been doing it, as my kids would say, like forever. During his school holidays, his mum would walk all over the UK with him. Great, long, adventurous, Land's End-style walks. And he's just published a book where he shows pictures made walking nearly 11,000 kilometres around the perimeter of the UK. He's probably thanking his lucky stars he wasn't born in Canada or somewhere of similar size. 6 years of coastlines, cliff-top paths, tidal rhythms, and light shifting hour by hour. His walk wasn't about speed, it wasn't about records. It was about looking, listening, noticing the subtle stories of edges. I was quite proud with that. Where the tide meets the land, where the sea meets the sky. As he'll suggest within the show today, the camera became an extension of his senses, a way to capture moments that most of us rush past without even so much of a glance. He wild camped, he struggled with the elements, he had moments he really thought about quitting, but he did it, he walked it. And then an agent comes along and says, hang on a moment, a book agent this is, hang on a moment, this is rather good, this. Inserting as many thises into a sentence as he possibly could. I'll have a piece of this. And now he has a book deal. Well, the book's published. And that's what we're talking about today. That idea about seeing, though, really seeing, is at the heart of what I love about walking and about this show, with the letters you write in about your own walks, your adventures, and your photographing along the miles. It's not necessarily the miles, it's the eyes wide openness that walking can bring. Which brings me to something personal. This October, it's our 20th wedding anniversary. My wife Sam and I plan to walk around, not the UK, but the Isle of Wight. We're starting with something a bit more subtle. About 70 miles in total, that is, give or take, following the official coastal path. So it's a bit of a tiddler compared to what Quintin's achieved, but it's a special place for the two of us. We have the week to do it. I can't say it's probably on the list of the most challenging walks. And if the weather's right, Sir Barkalot is coming with us as Sherpa Barkalot. The paths, because we've had a look, they slip through cliffside villages, over chins and downlands, past beaches, where fossilised footprints remain in the chalk. The Isle of Wight's quite famous for that. The walk is actually called, wait for it, because it does exactly what it says on the tin, the Isle of Wight Coastal Path. It's a full circuit, and, it'll be the first show Sam has appeared in properly, I suspect. It'll be our story. It's a photo walk, and it's a story that we'll make. So on our 20th anniversary, walking that loop might not necessarily at times be about celebration. Whose idea was this? I got blisters. It might be about rediscovering the world around us and the person beside us through the slow, the rhythmic act of putting one foot in front of another. And today that's the conversation. Not only about Quintin's 11,000 kilometres, though his is the kind of story that reminds us how transformative walking can actually be, but about finding our own small epics as he tells his story.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I think my mental health would fall apart if I didn't always walk. I mean, when I was 10, I walked from John O'Groats to Glasgow with my mum. I would cut the labels off my clothes just to save a few grams. And, when you're walking a really long, because I had a torn tendon, shin splints, overuse injuries. So it really played, and literally the challenge of this journey was making it physically easier, so mentally you could still be creative, to make you feel young again and to make the day feel longer. The best thing is to see something you haven't seen before. Long walks make you feel like you're slowing time a bit, especially somewhere new. Yes, I do feel that. I feel more alive and aware of my own feelings when I travel.
That's Quintin Lake, my guest on the Photo Walk show today. Alongside him, I'll be sharing some of your letters, your stories and thoughts that you've sent in about life and your adventures with a camera as we walk together. It's a show shaped by you as much as my wonderful guests, which is what makes this time together each week feel so personal. I'll take a look into the mailbag in a moment to see what's coming up, but first, a heartfelt thank you to our extra milers, our patrons. Your support and your belief in this show and the way you keep us walking together each week is really special. The new Reflections feature, which is on the Extra Mile channel, launched on Tuesday for you. They're short 8-minute daily features designed to inspire, and so far we've dealt with the menuless camera, my meeting with a very special couple which led to a piece about memory, success and what it perhaps is, plus today the perfectionist trap. Go to the website and look for the Support the Show tab if you'd like to receive those each week. Thank you also to our sponsors, arthelper.ai, who help you to sell your photos online by making the posts and the mock-ups and the marketing emails. If you've ever thought, well, I'd like to sell my work, but haven't a Scooby, where to start? Arthelper.ai, those nice people, they do the tricky bits for you, so you can understand the whole process. And you'll get 30 days free with code PHOTOWALK when you go to arthelper.ai. There is a link on the show page each week for them as well. Right, on the show, from the mailbag, Jade Lee has an idea for our 500th show recording, which means you can take part wherever you are in the world. Christopher Parsons has discovered the joy of sneaking into rooms to get the shot, the one you wouldn't usually dare make. You're about to learn a new word today from Bill Frische, and once you've heard it, I reckon you'll embrace it as your own. And Reed Gidez is in an old abandoned hospital. Plus, there's a new one-word assignment set by former guest, conflict and news photographer Gary Ramage. It's a word I did not expect him to come up with. That's what's on the show. Shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Dog treats, check. See, Michael, I did remember from last week. Walking boots, check. Some spare film or maybe an extra SD card? Check. And quiet, squeakless shoes for the sneaking about pictures you may be inspired to make? Check. Let's walk. Through the reeds. I'm walking the reed beds today. There we go. These reeds are now as tall easily as me. We're walking through Triffids, Pups. Actually, Pups gets the easier job here because I'm pushing through all the reeds and he just bimbles through the bit that's below that's got nothing there. It's all right, Pups. I'll do the hard work for both of us. Don't worry. The letters, the emails, the comments you leave gives our community a real uniqueness. Your thoughts about walking, creativity and photography provides a very welcome respite from the noise of this world as together during this show we put some miles under our feet and make a picture or two to remind us of where those footprints were left. Come on, Pups. He's loving all the water at the moment. There's some more water here. Can't really go in that one though, that's a bit too deep. This way, Pups, we'll find another one. Come on, this way. On the 30th of this month, 30th of July, we're in July now. Yeah, we're walking together in person to record the 500th edition of the Photo Walk show. So the invite is open to come and walk in person to make this special recording. I'll have some regular friends of the show there. Mally's going to be there. Mally of the Trees is coming. Look out for a man wearing a Sydney hat. My good friend Giles Penfound will be walking with us. Look out for the pristine Likers you could eat your breakfast off. And I'm in discussions with Sir Barkalot. Last time he was a tad too vocal when we were recording a guest's show. So we've had a chat. He's mulling it over and making contractual demands. So he is. Oh, dear. The critters this morning too. Early doors, the critters are all out at play. Obviously, I know that because we have a truly international audience, not everyone who'd like to come along can just easily pop across on a Wednesday for a walk in woodland and the once mahoosively long runway of Greenham Common in Berkshire, England. But I have a cunning plan that will hopefully deal with that. Oh, hang on. Sorry, nobody saw that as I went down in that dip through these reeds. Goodness. I got this from Jade Lee in Australia land. Hello, Neil. Just listening to the latest edition of the podcast where you mentioned the 500 recording. So I have an idea. Everyone stand back. Jade has an idea. Maybe you could ask the wider community in their parts of the world to walk at the same time, depending upon time differences, of course, or even on the same date as you record the 500th episode, July 30th. That will make us in parts of the world, like my home in Australia land, feel that sense of community at the same time, no matter where we are. And that, Jade, is a wonderful idea. So yes. First up, some more details on the UK event. We're going to meet at what's called the Control Tower. And my swimmers in this is the part of the river, the Kennet, where often I see the swimmers. My friends, the swimmers, they're not there this morning. That's a shame. We usually have a little chat. Yeah, so we meet at what's called the Control Tower, the car park at 10 o'clock, from where we'll be setting off. I wanted an early-ish start so that if it is a bright and sunny day, we do avoid the 1:30 p.m. sun-baked feel, particularly if Sir Barkalot's there. It's at Greenham Common Air Base in Newbury, Berkshire, and for the eagle-eyed members of our community, you'll now have noticed a menu item at the top of the website. It's a very simple page, address details, etc., some pictures of where we'll be walking, and a contact form to show your interest if you'd like to come along, just so I have some sort of idea of numbers. And as to Jade's idea, the time differences, if you were to walk at exactly the same time, would mean headlamps or head torch sales would go up in many other parts of the world, if only a smidge, of course. And so we'll do it this way. Yes, if you can walk at 10 a.m. your time, wherever you are in the world, and make some pictures for the show page, that is great. Equally, if you just walk on that date and make some photographs to celebrate walking along on the 500th edition, then that's superb as well. I will take the photographs and some small stories if you have them as well, and even better if you want to record a couple of words along the trail. Perfect. I will take those and put them on the show page of that edition. We're recording in July on the 30th, but the edition actually goes out in September when we reach that 500. So there we go, the 500th episode recording, which, as I say, will go out in September. We'll be walking on the 30th of July. Meet at 10 a.m, Greenham Common, Berkshire, England Land. Whatever the weather, we'll be walking. If it's raining, bring stuff for a rainy walk. Right, first letter. Come on, pups, this way. First letter to come shortly. Just gone under, in case you were thinking, where is he, in a tunnel? Yeah, just under the railway bridge. First letter to come shortly. Let's meet our guest. Quintin Lake is a fine art and architectural photographer. Come on, pups. And we'll talk about his love of geometry and design later on. But I want to spend the bulk of our chat today talking about this phenomenal 11,000 kilometre walk. The physical and mental calling and toll of doing such a task. It's a walk that's taken many years. He did it in stages so that he could still pay the rent from the day job. And it started actually back in 2015. I've been planning a few long walks myself, and this actually just cemented the thought that you don't have to do it all in one. It can be done as a wonderful photographic and walking project across many years. He wild camped it. So a lot of the time he was really in the elements. He tore a tendon along the way. He kept as near as he could to the coast at all times, once finding himself pretty much trapped against a rising tide. Suffice to say, it's a life experience, although that does rather seem like an understatement, as you're about to hear. My guest this week is Quintin Lake, and we have 3 parts spread across this show, with a further part to come today on the Extra Mile. Quintin, you'll hopefully forgive my association of your work with a salt path, and I do hope your eyes don't roll as I say it. Not least because it is a book we've been talking about of late for its resonance with our show's title and the ethos about walking and mental health and so on.
Yeah. And
the story of Ray and Moth. I don't know whether you've seen the film or read the book.
I did. I saw the film about a week ago, and then I read or listened to the book as audio when I walked the Cornish coast path, whenever that is now, nine years ago.
It's a fabulous story, isn't it? It really is. But I am going to ask you what your decision was and why you decided to make a walk. It's a little bit further than the path that, well, I say a little bit, is under-egging it, but it's 10,000 kilometres. That's quite a decision.
It was a big decision. For me as a photographer, it was all about inspiration. So I had walked the Thames from the source to London, and that led to another walk from the Severn from the source to the sea. And then the coastal bit had more stories, more visuals. That incredible 13-metre tide you get on the Severn, where when the tide falls, you get this sort of abstract look with the sand and the water. And I got really fascinated by that. And then next to it, you have the infrastructure. Then you have kind of fossils of dinosaur prints, and it's just so many stories. And I just got gripped by that, and my career prior to that moment was all abroad in sort of classically exotic locations. So it was like a new engagement with Britain. And as you say, it was a massive commitment in some ways. In other ways, it was only took a couple of weeks from deciding to do it to start.
Are you that kind of person that just thinks, right, I've got an idea, let's do it?
Yes. I mean, that's the whole purpose in a way of being self-employed and being a photographer. You have clients, you have constraints, but then I always try and carve out some of the year, maybe 3 months of the year, where I can follow my creative desires.
How does that work then? Because you've got clients and you're taking, I think you took 2 or 3 months off at a time. It was in stretches, wasn't it?
It was in stretches. Well, for the perimeter, I walked between 2 weeks and 2 months at a time.
Right, okay.
And then I scheduled it quite carefully ahead. Which so the downside of that was every day that I planned to walk, I needed to walk, even if it was a storm. Yeah. But then that meant, because it was in my diary, I could work around family matters and clients and book jobs on either side of it. And then I funded it by selling prints as well as commercial work. And then my life's quite lean. I don't own a car. I was wild camping all the time. So the travel itself was kind of lean in terms of expense.
I was going to ask you how you stayed in places. So there were no pubs or.
It was very interactive, this journey for me, with Twitter and many of the suggestions of places to go, what people said online, and that often involved pubs. But I had to be quite Puritan about it because I needed to cover 25 kilometers each day, and I allowed about 3 hours of photography each day. And if the photography was inspiring, I would make up the time by walking at night with a head torch. So there wasn't much time for fun and games, really. And I also tended to walk solo because I was, from dawn to dusk, I was looking for images, which is very different to my leisure time where I love walking with friends and family. But this was kind of work, looking for images. So no, there weren't many pubs.
I was going to ask actually how long you gave to the photography, because you are a photographer. But if you,
and that was the purpose of the journey. I would find it less a meaningful journey to do this as a kind of test of endurance or as a physical thing. Although that does make me happy. What really motivated me each day was not knowing what image I would discover that day.
I don't want to pry. It sounds like I'm going to when I ask this question.
Yeah, go on.
but did you find that it improved mental health? Obviously physical health, I would imagine is something that improves with walking this much distance.
Yeah, I think my mental health would fall apart if I didn't always walk. I mean, it's like when I was 10, I walked from John O'Groats to Glasgow with my mum.
When you were 10?
10. Oh. A tiny little backpack. We stayed in B&Bs. Oh, wow. That's what we did on a school summer holiday. When I was 20, I walked from Land's End to John O'Groats, which is 1,000 miles, with a bivvy bag. And then every year I'd always done long walks. And then as an adult, I always have a long walk planned in 2 or 3 weeks' time. But then I walk every day. It's what I do with my family on the weekend. So it's a big part of my life. And I feel if I'm ill or whatever reason prevents me from doing it, I can definitely feel my mood, my rumination kind of increases. So yeah, it's really important to me.
It's a good job your family like walking, isn't it?
They've got no choice.
I don't imagine you're somebody that's, with due respect to the place, that would ever find themselves looking forward to a beach holiday in Benidorm.
I do find that difficult. Yeah, if we ever do something like that, it's tricky for me to be still like that. I can easily be still in nature, especially maybe behind the tripod, maybe at those dusk dawn moments. Yeah. Very peaceful, waiting for those moments. But sitting down on a holiday, it's not my thing.
Well, one thing I've not really considered too much until I read the path, actually, and I know it's the weight that they were able to take was for very different reasons, and particularly for Moth's illness that he had.
Yeah,
but it is a consideration when you're thinking, right, what photographic equipment can I take? How many lenses will I allow myself? Do I take a tripod? How much does the tent weigh? These are all huge considerations. Did you stay with the same kit for that 5 years of it?
Pretty much. I mean, I would go further. On my rest days, I would cut the labels off my clothes just to save a few grams. And when you're walking a really long, because I had a torn tendon, shin splints, overuse injuries. So it really and literally the challenge of this journey was making it physically easier, so mentally you could still be creative. And I carried a really heavy camera, a Canon 5DSR, because my prints that I sell are quite big, like 1.5 meters by 1 meter. Yeah. So I needed that resolution. So my camera kit was 4 or 5 kilos, and yet my tent was like a mountain marathon tent, which is 850 grams. So my overall pack weight was pretty standard, but it was super light kind of backpacking gear and then really heavy photo gear. So in the summer, it was about 12 kilos. And in the winter in Scotland, it was more like 20, 25 kilos.
25 kilos on your back?
Yeah.
That's the amount of weight that one might expect to take on a flight for 2 weeks holidays.
It's heavy. I mean, the base weight, which is weight without fuel and food in Scotland in the winter, was 10 kilograms because it's cold and wet and horrible all the time. And then I carried normally 5 days food at a time, and it's approximately 800 grams or kilo of weight per day because you need 4,000 or 5,000 calories of nutrition in Scotland because if you're carrying that much weight and dawn to dusk, you're always fighting the cold. So it was a massive amount of food. And often, surprisingly, I wasn't meeting anyone for a few days. So I found it liberating to have autonomy for those days. And in terms of power, I carried a lot of power packs, like 0.5 kilo of lithium. And then that meant every 5 days I'd either stay in a hostel or someone would put me up, or I'd stay in a B&B. And that was, at the beginning, I did it because I had to. And in the end, I enjoyed that because it meant I could just dedicate myself to feeling the landscape for 5 days. And I found that staying in a B&B, or it kind of pulled me away from being in nature, which I felt was important to see the images when they came.
4,000 to 4,500 calories per day.
Yeah.
I mean, I often listen to those that are in the health industry, and they talk about the macros and how much you need and da-da-da-da.
Exactly.
I would imagine, though, you sort of had to go into that currency to make sure you looked after yourself.
I mean, that was the big. Yeah, I got quite a yes. If I continued, because basically I didn't at the beginning, and then that's why parts of my body started to fall apart, and that was my sort of personal physical lesson, was how to eat better, how to stretch, how to train better. And so I'm now nearly 50, and I started the journey when I was nearly 40. But if I was to start the journey now, touch wood, I think I'd be physically find it easier because of those things. It's just basic stuff, sleeping enough, eating better, less processed food, stretching more. And so I did more of that as the journey progressed, because I kept getting injured.
The idea of it being a solitary event in your life.
Yes.
I find I like to photograph in a solitary way, even if we've gone on some terrific journeys of late with the podcast to places like India. But even when I find myself in somewhere like Delhi, which is
very social,
packed to the rafters with people, noise, and everything going on.
Yeah.
I still want to find a little bit of solitary time where everything seems to be going on around me.
Yes.
You sound like you're a similar person.
I am. I really enjoy social events, but certainly when I'm creative, I need that solitude. I think it was Picasso that said, without great solitude, no great work is possible. I kind of agree, because it's a different mindset, isn't it? You're looking for the image, you're looking creatively. But if I'm with a friend, we're talking and laughing, and I'm not looking in the same way. That said, I definitely missed human contact. And when I met a farmer or another hiker, it was often a really intense connection. And some of those people are still kind of friends, because it has an extra power when you haven't met anyone for a long time.
And Quintin Lake is back shortly. Across the years, I've had the opportunity to visit the most extraordinary buildings, including some of London's most iconic high-rises and Napoleonic forts surrounded by the sea. And more usually than not, I get the opportunity to just wander with my camera and photograph pretty much what I want. And aided by this first letter into the show, it's got me thinking about the buildings we pass every day, or often, because of where we work or what we do, the places we sit inside for hours, which themselves can hold whole worlds of wonder. Try saying that 3 times in a row quickly. If we're willing to look, some of the opportunities we have with our camera are fantastic. Remember, pack it with you in your bag at all times. Creativity often waits in those overlooked corners, as I say, and sometimes the only permission we actually need is our own. Go on, get on with it. Come on, Neil, you're in a Napoleonic fort in the sea. Stop eating your Marmite and cheese sandwiches and go see what's behind that door over there. All right. So from our very good friend of the show now, Christopher Parsons, PhD, no less. Some inspiration, I feel. Howdy, Neil. It rhymes. I wanted to share a few experiences I've recently had, and which I think demonstrate the value of just being brave and making an image. Experience 1. I was recently on a training course at an off-site location which happened to overlook part of Toronto that I pass by almost every week. I'm familiar then with the location, but I'd never seen it from 15 stories up. When we went to the training room, I noticed a neighbouring conference room had a fantastic view of the square in Toronto, and I made a note. I'm coming back to this room to view it before I leave. Now, after a long day's training, we're heading out. I have to sign out of the building so security actually knows that we've exited this space. On my way to reception, I saw that conference room again and made the split decision. Well, either to split and pop into the unused room and get my photo, or pass on by and avoid feeling anxious for making an image in what was really an unauthorized space. What do you think I did? I think you took the picture. I did. I dashed into the room, good lad Chris, and made a quick image with my iPhone. I think because I'm used to making images on the fly and the street, and my iPhone settings are always preset, I was able to quickly make this image and leave the room in mere seconds. And I ended up creating a frame that's novel to my eye, and interesting to see. I completely agree with you. I will leave a link to your photograph on the show page. Perhaps you'll allow me the privilege of popping it onto the show page itself. But yes, it's there either way. Experience 2. The Hudson's Bay stores closed as of June the 1st, 2025. Big story in Canada, this one, actually. Their stores are a key part of Canadian history. And you can't learn about Canada without learning a bit about the company obtaining a royal charter in 1670, or its role in providing goods to Canadians following our Confederation in 1867. Generations of Canadians visited and purchased goods from their various outlets. It holds a deep resonance amongst many of us. It sounds to me like it's your... Oh, there goes. Can you hear it in the background? There we go, pups. That's the first pinstriped express we've seen. Oh, why are you sneezing? Did we see one earlier? You might be right. Where was I? Yeah, I'm just reading Christopher's letter. Can I crack on with it, please? Thank you. This feels to me, Chris, don't look at me like that, not you, Chris, the dog, well, it's a sort of Marks and Spencer. I've done a bit more work and researched exactly what Hudson's, or the Bay, just call it the Bay, don't you? What they used to sell, what they used to do. And it's not completely like Sparky Marks, as my wife calls it, but it's a sort of Marks and Spencer relationship that you have. It was a way of my life as I was growing up. Oh, Mum, do we have to go to Marks and Spencer to buy school trousers? Marks and Spencer visits, and the visit to our local department store, Graveson's, which I think is still there in Hartford. That was always, oh no, it's back to school. It was always school shopping for new trousers in Sparky Marks. In anticipation of the Bay closing, I spent some time, says Chris, documenting the Toronto flagship store after it had been mostly emptied of textiles and other goods. There were still people roaming looking for deals, but most of the scraps they'd been picked over. That makes it sound like quite a sad event at the same time. The end of an era with culture vultures pecking at anything left. When I started photographing, says Christopher, I was frankly a little nervous and half expecting to be tossed out of the building by security staff. Even in friendly Canada land, stores don't tend to love people wandering around and taking lots of photos. Fortunately, however, I was left alone and had a chance to document the closing of the Toronto flagship and also the end of that literal era. I took a number of images over about 2 hours. Blimey, they really did let you alone, didn't they? 2 hours to want... Were you there when the store had closed? You could have been in one of those Twilight Zone episodes, couldn't you? The one, what's it, the shopping mall, is it called? Where a couple get locked in... is it a couple get locked in a shopping mall with all the mannequins? I'll let you look that one up. But 2 hours, whew, that's a reasonable amount of time, isn't it? And the final series of images are at, and I tell you what, we've got another link, so I shall leave that on the show page as well. And if Chris gives me an opportunity to show some of, or maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 of the images from that, I'll pop those up on the show page as well. The title of the series, you've got to have a title, is called All Sales Final. So what's the lesson, says Chris, or at least, what do I take from this? Well, these are photographic opportunities that are all around us, but it can feel uncomfortable or risky or potentially inappropriate to go and capture or take advantage of them. But I think those are exactly the kinds of blocks that we should seriously evaluate and consider whether we can responsibly and respectively push past them, i.e. don't hurt or cause harm to others, so that we can grow as photographers and even embrace the discomfort. Even when pleasing images aren't made during these occasions of photographic flexing, we can grow a bit and realise that more often than not, it's our own hang-ups that are impeding the next steps of our photographic development. Hope you're keeping well. From Chris. Chris, I can feel myself saying hallelujah to that, because I think you're absolutely right in every way. What I love about your story is the reminder that creativity often lives, well, just beyond that moment of hesitation, doesn't it? In a room we weren't quite sure we were allowed to go into. Now, I know you have to be careful and weigh up stuff like personal safety and so on. And I tell a story later on in the show today to my guest Quintin Lake about photographing in a part of Greenham Common Air Base, the silos that used to house these transporters with their nuclear payload on them. When they were cleared out, when the base was cleared out, it was possible just to... well, I won't tell too much of the story. I'm going to do a complete spoiler otherwise. But look, it was strictly out of bounds. I am not an urbexer, so that was a stretch for me. Chris, your visit to the Bay, as it's known, feels more like, well, more than just documenting a closing. It was your part of honouring a bit of history, wasn't it? Even as the lights were going out, you were making these pictures 2 hours on. So, yeah, perfect. I shall, as I say, leave a link to both those stories on the show page today. And with all the letters you write into the show, I think it's time to honour you now with your official show name. It had to come. I wasn't sure whether to do this because, well, you have a PhD and a stack of other qualifications. You hardly need another title. But all the same, in terms of the show, Christopher Parsons, forthwith, you are also now known as the Learned Lord Parsons of Pixelshire. Your scarlet robe and garter collar arrives in the post on Monday. I'll remind you of the one-word assignment in a moment, ahead of more from our guest, Quintin Lake, today. First up, absolutely made up that we continue to be supported by arthelper.ai. And if you're not absolutely sure how they can help you, then here's a reminder from my studio self.
If you've ever thought about selling your photography online but haven't a clue where to start, I think Art Helper could probably help you because it's made for people like us. Here's how it works. You upload a photo. Magically and instantly, professional content is made for you, such as social media posts, email newsletters, even full Substack articles, all in your own voice. It can also generate hundreds of mock-ups for every image you upload, things like your work framed so people get a real understanding of what your photograph could look like on their wall. It helps you connect with the right buyers and even suggests pricing based on your market. And unlike most AI tools, it has an art protection guarantee, which means something very important: your images are never used for AI training. Free to try, and Art Helper is giving our listeners a special deal. Go to arthelper.ai, use the code PHOTOWALK and get 30 days free of the pro version. I'll make sure to put a link on the show page, but also now there's a video that my friend Brandon at Art Helper made to help us understand and be able to see how the thing works. So if you go to the show page, you'll see Brandon explaining and showing exactly how this could work for you and I. It's a great way to start selling your art or growing the business you already have. And thank you, arthelper.ai, for your belief in this show.
It's the Photo Walk show. I love this stretch of the... we've got stick pups. Stretch of the canal here. Hear that in the background? We've got the birds, we've got the loch. Just gently filling up. Oh, wonderful. Beautiful. Let me just get a picture over here. I think this might be one of these really... No, I don't think it's that one. There's a record of some of the beautiful willows along here, which are famous for a reason, I think, of age. I will have to remind myself. I don't think this is one, but there's certainly one by A Loch. And this is A Loch. 1400. Hold on, pups. It's a quiet moment. f4.5, 160 ISO. A willow against a very blue, cloudless sky. What do you want? Do you want okay. Let me put the letters down there. He's very funny here because I like to sit on the lock gates and the big long arms that stretch out from them. And he never comes up. He's not quite sure. Is it going to move? I don't. So there we go. Do you want one of these? So even if I have his favourite treats, come on then. There we go, ASMR. Perfect, one more. Lovely, right, come on. I like to sit on this, as I say, sit on the arm. It's called the arm of the lock gate, and just take in the morning sun. In the winter, actually, it's lovely. It's cold, we're sort of hunkered down there for a little while, but he never climbs up. Come on, you daft old thingy. Right, one word assignment time. Here comes your challenge for a new month. I'll tell you how you can take part in a moment, and I'll announce the winner to June's next week, if that's okay with you. I'm still uploading a few. It seems to be like that most months. Anybody want to come and be an uploader for me? No, thank you, Neil. I'm busy enough as it is. So this month's assignment, anyway, is set by former guest Gary Ramage, the former war and conflict photographer and news photographer, somebody who spent a degree of his life in places where you might not think the word he's about to set exists, or is at least easy to instantly find. So, Gary, this month's assignment then, something to find with your camera. The one-word challenge. What is that word?
I think I'll go with tranquility.
Oh, perfect. Tranquility. And I like that particularly for this show. We talk a lot about the quiet of photographs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think of one of your pictures that would show total tranquility. I'm going to choose one for the war zone, actually, which we talked about in your interview, which is the young lad, the 20-year-old lad, 21-year-old lad, cuddled into his bomb disposal worker dog, keeping warm together in the night.
It's a beautiful picture, and yeah, I don't normally say that about my pictures. I don't really talk about my pictures, but it is. I've got it as it's a massive sort of 3 meter by 2 meter picture on my wall. And part of the reason it's in the dining room is when we have dinner with guests, it's the first thing they see. It's the talking point.
Do you go out with your camera to try and find tranquility at all? Are you somebody who looks for the quiet?
Yeah, probably first thing in the morning. Like, we're coming into winter now, so normally what I'll do, I'll walk down the driveway and I'll just take photos of frost and peace and quiet. Before I go off to my job, and it just sets me on my path for the day.
Send your pictures to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. 2,500 pixels wide, if you can do that, please. Full res is fine, and I can do the heavy lifting for you, but otherwise 2,500 pixels wide. For optimization, a few thoughts about the image can help with the story as well, if you feel so inclined. No watermarks, no borders, but do include links to your socials, your website, etc., so I can share more of your work. It helps immeasurably. It really does. It might seem only like a small thing, but it's a big thing. If you can include full URLs to things like Glass, Flickr, profiles and so on, that really does help, including Instagram, actually. If you can do that, that's fantastic. Submissions go onto the assignments page and may well also feature on our Instagram, along with a tag back to you, of course. Right, back to my guest, Quintin Lake, for more about his tremendous walk around the perimeter of the UK, where I am sure there were moments of real tranquility. Here's Quintin.
I want to talk about your other photography, of which there is much, and a life spent studying architecture within the show shortly. But I'll tease as well by saying we're going to talk about Invisible God, Spaces of Fear, and Absent Pyramid, which are all subjects dear to, well, especially the pyramids, very, very dear to my heart. But in terms of this project, did you have a clear photographic vision before you set off? Or did
That's really interesting.
Did it evolve?
So all the projects I've done before that, I had a very tight aesthetic and subject brief, because that's almost the accepted wisdom, isn't it? Within photography, if you're doing a project, you want it to have a unified aesthetic. And when I started the project, I thought it would be mostly abstract seascapes, maybe like Shigemoto seascapes. And then as soon as really within the first few days, I thought, this is insane. I'm walking past things I'm never going to see again. I'm seeing kind of Napoleonic era coastal defenses, the Norman, the Roman. There's so many interesting things about it. So I started to document things much wider. And I thought it's almost just for me out of curiosity. So I had these different strands of types of images. And then at the end, it was curating it to make a book or to exhibit it. that's been the most creative part. So it was the first project in my life where I hadn't done that. So I think like you could critically say, oh, this work has no style. What is his approach? Or you could say this is like the joy of the different ways you can see as a photographer.
And discovering as you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was something like, what was it? The best part of 180,000 images that you had to edit down from.
That's right. Yeah, it was actually a 3-year process to edit. 5 years of walking, 3 years of editing. Yeah. So that was massive. But it's partly my approach as a photographer. There's an interesting subject. I might quickly sketch around 50, 60 images, and I kind of, in Lightroom, I can cull most of those pretty fast.
So you weren't editing as you went along?
No, I did edit after each leg in South England when it was easier. Yeah. But in Scotland, it was so physically challenging that half the journey I edited after I finished in lockdown.
How does the journaling work as you're going along, writing places, remembering places?
So I use an app called IA Writer on my phone, and then if it was, a lot of it was overheard conversations or people I met or how I was feeling, I tried to write all the things I couldn't convey in the photos, and then that became the source of a column in Digital Camera magazine, and then that again got rewritten for the book. So that's how I did journaling.
Was the book in mind as you set off? Was there always going to be a book?
There was, but I thought it would be a crowd-funded kind of self-published deal. I never thought that an agent would call me near the end and get me a major trade publisher to run with this crazy book, because it's got 1,300 photos, 450 pages, and it's a dream come true that a publisher like that would want to deal with a photo book. Yeah. Because it's not the usual suspects. It's Cornerstone, which is part of Penguin Random House, so it's a different market positioning.
How does that whole process work? I'm fascinated by the process of photographers who have something worthy of being published, but going about that publishing route, how does it work?
Well, I think you need an agent to open those doors, and I think the agent has to call you, I think. So that's what happened to me, and then we worked together with an agent to do a proposal, and then I had to write two chapters and design 2 chapters and the introduction. So it was a number of months of unpaid work, which then he hustles out to different publishers, and then the publishers which are interesting do a fee proposal. I mean, I had to have an advance enough that I could concentrate on this for a year. I mean, otherwise I just economically couldn't do it with family and all that. And then that was the process, and then there was a year of production of writing every day and editing.
Well, we're clearly going to link to it on the website. There's in terms of pictures, it's a square format. The decision process behind a lot of your work is square.
So the Thames project and the Severn project and then the Perimeter was all 1-to-1 square format. The reason is that I love geometry in images, and I love the very, very minute precision of composition, and I find the square really inspiring. And especially because the seascape, you tend to think of landscape images. The square made me see things a bit differently. Yeah. And then so the book is square to riff off that.
Did walking change the way you see our country?
Wow. Well, walking is essential for me to draw on my creativity. If we drove now to a location like, say, Turtle Door by car, there would be a bit of a distance between me and the landscape. But if I walk to it, I feel much more attuned to what's unique about it. So there's that aspect. Maybe it's almost like the blood flow to the brain. But the other thing is, by that much walking, looking at similar things, I'm much better now at seeing something that's unique. To take maybe a lighthouse or the play of light on water, what I might have thought is, oh, that's interesting at the beginning, I might not think that now. So I think it's more just by looking at something a long time, you get much better at identifying something which is exceptional, which is obviously really, really important for photography, to see what's really unique.
Access is a really important facet as well, and there are parts of the UK which access is perfect and you can walk where you want to walk. There are other parts where it still intensely aggravates me, where for no reason it seems to be. I understand when you get to military firing ranges where you wouldn't necessarily want to walk through a red flag, but there are other parts of the UK that you might have found a bit of a challenge to get through.
Absolutely. I mean, Scotland, you have the beautiful right to roam, the right to camp, and I think we should have the same law in England. I can't see any reason for mental, physical health why we shouldn't have access to especially all the coastline, all the rivers and all woodland, and that absolutely is not the case. I mean, I couldn't have done this project without a lot of trespassing, especially in the wealthy areas. in Sussex and Essex, I did hundreds of kilometres of trespassing. And the funny thing is, when the landowner comes up and asks you to move on, they don't really mind if you're moving on in the direction you're walking. So I could still make progress.
It's an irony there, really, isn't it?
It is an irony. But I absolutely agree that's a kind of an iniquity. As you say, there are genuinely good reasons for ecology, maybe for hunting and shooting in certain areas and for the military, but they're often used as kind of an excuse to blank people out of areas. And I think also because we don't have so much wildlife, so much green spaces in this island, and then it feels quite an exclusionary thing for people who haven't been brought up in the outdoors anyway, because you have to be able to read a map really to navigate in the countryside here, because we don't have the signposts like you do in the continent, because we don't have so much wildlife. So I think it's just one more reason why young people might feel they can't go into nature, and I think that should change.
In terms of the people you met, you touched on it. You had some wonderful exchanges with people. I'm not going to ask you to recount all the people you met, but there must have been a few people that have left you with wonderful feelings, some fantastic stories.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the person who stuck with me the most was a farmer near the Mull of Galloway, and it was quite hilly, and I'd come off the hill in the back of his farm, and he was over 80 with great vitality, kind of brightness in his eyes, and he was carrying a spade and a pickaxe, and he'd just been mucking out his cows, and surrounded by, it's in the Rins, it's a beautiful undulating green landscape, and there were 6 crofts scattered around him, and when he was younger they all worked. All the families in those 6 crofts worked for him, and one by one they'd all left to seek their fortune elsewhere. And it was too far away for tourists to use those crofts, so he felt like he was kind of the last of the Mohicans. And he was great sense of humour. When I took his portrait, he asked if I had to join the army afterwards, and all this kind of stuff. So he was, and his accent was kind of like Irish, Scottish hybrid. So his vitality, all the people that were working with their hands to maintain the landscape that we take for granted, that really struck me.
Yeah. Were there moments, even though you walked this in I'm not going to call them small stretches at all, because they're not, obviously, but were there moments where you felt, not sure if I can continue with this? I feel like you mentioned shin splints, and what did you do? You snapped or something with a tendon as well?
So I had a longitudinal tear of my tendon. Fortunately, that happened in Liverpool, so I could just hobble home, and then I had to wear one of those walker boots, those incapacitating shoes for 3 months. It was kind of a nightmare. I lost all my fitness and the motivation. That was a challenge. Yeah, I mean, there were times it was quite dramatic. I kind of fell on the heather and wept and was too cold and knackered. But then when you're by yourself and it's cold, you haven't got any choice but to just get up and keep going. And then there's a long journey like this. There's a weight of pressure. You think, I've already done 7,000 kilometers. I really don't want to give up now. No. So it kind of does get easier.
There's a huge romanticism attached to it as well. When I learned about your story, I thought, Quintin, I often say people are living the dream. I think I must say that at least once a week to somebody I meet. But it does appear to me that you would be living the dream during these moments, because what you did is what I would love to do.
I think that's the beautiful thing about the British. I mean, I didn't meet anyone that didn't. I mean, no one said I was crazy, and half the people I met would say, I'd love to do that. What a brilliant thing to do. And I think that's kind of wonderful, because it's not obvious that there's value in doing a journey like this. And I think the British do understand the value of their landscape and of walking and of meeting people and understanding their island. And for all those that say it, I would say just start it, because even if you do one day every 2 months, it's still a sense of purpose and a sense of journey, and you'll still have as profound an experience as I did.
I think that's what I'm left with out of your story, is you don't have to do it in one. This can be something that you join together across, a decade. Is just an arbitrary figure.
And that gives you more time to research and to learn about what you've seen in the past and what's coming up, and can give you a richer understanding of what's to come. Yes.
Was there a point where you stopped being surprised by the landscape? You're a landscape photographer, you're an architectural photographer.
Yes.
You love nature, you love what you find. You've already expressed that within our conversation. Did it always offer up something new, or did it become just another day sometimes?
I mean, the times that I kind of lost the inspiration, that was always because I was exhausted and cold. But providing I'd had not enough food, providing the basics were taken care of every day was really inspiring. I mean, and also because you're kind of looking for it. There was one day in Galloway where it was so rainy, I hadn't taken a picture all day. And then there was a lighthouse, and I covered my camera with my jacket to get one frame, it turned out to be a strong image. So it's always like when you're looking for the image, it really makes every day inspiring, even if everything's conspiring against you. And then other times, if it was maybe drizzling, I would tend to photograph in places like forests where you get those saturated light. So I was adapting my approach because of the weather.
Oh, so the weather played an important role in the tone of the photograph.
That's really the author of my book, is the weather and the seasons. Yes, very much so, yeah.
Did the walk change your relationship with time?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Well, yeah, I think when you don't psychologists talk about the sense of compression of time as you get older is a lot to do with the fact that you're doing the same thing every day rather than the fact you're seeing something new. Yeah. And to make you feel young again and to make the day feel longer, the best thing is to see something you haven't seen before. Long walks make you feel like you're slowing time a bit, especially somewhere new. Yes, I do feel that.
Logistics. I've never wild camped. It's almost like I'm talking to somebody who's going to be, without knowing it, a kind of a mentor for me. So your book is clearly one I'm going to have to read. I'm intrigued how that works. How does wild camping? I know you can do it in Scotland, but you can't do it in England.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a potentially slightly pretentious term, isn't it? Wild camping, and basically it's just camping. But I think what the wild means is you're not paying for the campsite. Yeah. That's the real difference. So, and in England, because that's not allowed other than in Dartmoor and above 300 meters in some national parks, that means you have to stealth camp. So it means you have to pitch your tent late at night, break it early, stay out of sight. So generally that's kind of in woodlands or hidden little nooks and crannies, and with the attitude that if someone asks you to move on, you say, I'm really sorry, no problem, I'll move on. Yeah. So that's the approach in England. And someone just getting into it, I would suggest somewhere that's sort of, as long as the weather's good, somewhere like the high ground of the Brecons or Dartmoor is sort of relatively easy way to find flat ground in a way which isn't kind of scary. And when you get more confidence, it's on a long journey like this, as it starts to get dark, you just find some little tucked away place. Or you go to Scotland where there's none of that problem at all. You can camp wherever you like, as long as you're respecting the landowner and obviously leave no trace of your path.
Was it strange at the start? I mean, you mentioned the word scary, and that's one of the things I think about is, not quite sure I feel comfortable being absolutely on my own, not knowing who's going to tap on the tent.
Yeah, I mean, my only fear on this journey is other people. I didn't fear, nature, storm, all of that. It's very, very much the case. And my approach to that was just to make sure I was never in line of sight of a building. I was hidden away. I was sort of thinking strategically to make sure I was hidden. And, if you're in the middle of a wood and it's dusk, I mean, people are going to be scared of you, not the other way around. That wasn't a concern, no.
Without labouring the point, did you have any moments where people tapped on the tent or you felt a bit uncomfortable?
Yeah, I had the really humiliating experience of feeling the ground shaking and a horse walking past me, and someone looks down and goes, I don't know why on earth you're camped there, move on, like this. And I was literally lying on the ground with this huge thing above me. So that felt completely kind of medieval. But I had much more acts of kindness. People brought me food because I thought I looked hungry, or invited me in for a shower. Most of the experience was really positive in England as well as Scotland.
I was looking at your talking schedule. It looked like you were talking to camera clubs as you made the journey. That's probably not true, is it? It's probably following parts of your journey where you did these.
Well, I did do it because I was walking in legs. Sometimes I would walk in a leg when I was at home editing and working, and then I'd go to camera clubs. I didn't talk to any while I was hiking.
No. But what about the radio shows? Because having worked in BBC regional radio, you are the kind of person that if I heard you were walking along our path, I'd send a radio car out instantly.
Yeah, no, there was the BBC was amazing because they picked up the story right at the beginning when I'd only done about 10 days, and I thought, how did they even know I was going to continue? But maybe it's what you're saying. Yeah. But that got a head of steam at the end. So by the time I got to Yorkshire, every single regional radio station kind of handed me over to the next. So I don't know, I had like 30 interviews or something on the East Coast, and some of them were in studios where I hadn't showered for 3 days, and some I was in a ditch trying to shelter my little microphone from the wind. So it was all great. I mean, I loved meeting all the journalists, and they're all brilliant people. There was a lot of that.
I did take a wry smile actually, Quintin, because having worked in that industry for a good few years, I And certainly in the breakfast part or the part of the day, the portion of the day, we used to feed people. And I thought, was Quintin working out where he could feed next? Because if you go on a breakfast show, there was generally, I don't know whether the BBC works this way, there was maybe more budget around them, but the green room had a good spread of food on usually.
I only got a cup of tea. I think budgets are tough now. I was still grateful for it. I mean, the weird thing about a long coastal walk is the wind is just incessant. So it feels it feels great to just get out of the wind.
How do you see Britain now? Post perimeter.
I've got a mental map of it as maybe like a tapestry of clans of people who have this very close connection to a particular landscape with a particular accent, and very, very different, often being quite hostile to the neighbouring region in a kind of humorous way. And I love that. It certainly feels unified by the difference, if that's not corny. And when I see the news and think of somewhere, whether it's Aberystwyth or somewhere in Caithness, I can sort of smell it and feel what that area is like. And if I'm travelling in London on the tube, I think this is the same piece of rock as the cliffs of northwest Scotland, and that's a great feeling.
We have a question I usually end interviews with, and I think you'll be the first ever person that I've asked this question of twice within an interview. It's a single word, but I think it applies to this story before I move on and talk about your other photography. There's a word that I use, and it's why. Why do this? Why? You touched on it at the start, but this is an incredible feat. It really is.
I mean, creativity is the point of life, isn't it? And then to do something creative, you need inspiration. And inspiration always comes when you walk through a landscape with a kind of curious heart and mind. And why Britain? Because of the geology and the history. I believe there's more stories in a small area that unfold at walking speed in Britain than anywhere else. That's not to say Britain is a better landscape, but it does change very rapidly at walking speed. That I think is a unique thing geographically compared to anywhere else in the world.
And we'll rejoin Quintin shortly. Somebody asked me the other day, it might have been Mally. Was it Mally? Oh no, I know. Scratch out those notes. It was Jeffrey Sidoris, all-round very creative man, podcaster, artist and writer. He asked, what's the thing that keeps you coming back to do the podcast? Because I was talking about the number 500 approaching. Sorry, Mally, I thought it was you for a moment, but it wasn't. It was definitely Jeffrey. And I said, well, mostly it's about the snacks. I keep hoping somebody will leave a biscuit halfway down the lane, a Garibaldi if I'm very, very lucky. So far, 489 walks, not one snifter, but hope springs eternal. But in truth, my response was the letters, because whilst it's genuinely a thrill to talk to guests like Quintin today, you are the glue, it even rhymes, that holds this idea of a community photo walk together. It's a long way from Tipperary, cue the song, and it's a fairly long way from it being my full-time job too. Actually, probably longer than the trip to Tipperary, but just keep swimming, as Dory says. Because the notes and the letters are as much a thrill to receive today as the first one that officially came in from Hegard the Dane, I suspect, when the world was still in black and white. But here's the sort of, because there don't have to be long letters, here's the sort of note that is exactly what I'm talking about. From Bill Frische. From Bill, hello Neil. I've listened to many episodes and extra miles as I recovered over the past year, and long may that recovery be successful, Bill. And there's a word that I think fits your show perfectly. Does it begin with a B? I hear you and your guests talk about it a lot, using different words, but this word I think fits the best and sums them all up. I learned this from another famed Englishman, C.S. Lewis, who got it, I think, from George MacDonald and shared it with Tolkien and Sayers. Blimey, good company to have on speed dial, wouldn't you say? Who's on your speed dial? Tolkien? Oh, get you. It's Sehnsucht. Sehnsucht is a deep, inconsolable longing for something indefinable, often triggered by beauty or joy. It's a feeling of missing something, even when we don't know what that something is. And it points towards a reality beyond our everyday experience. I thought you might be interested in this because I hear this in you and a lot of your guests. Blimey, Bill. every day truly is a school day. When I started to think about Sehnsucht, I thought, yeah, I think I have that. I truly believe I do. This longing, this yearning, just between, can you go in there, pups? I'm not sure. Hang on, Bill. This is a part of the walk where there's a small brook. If I were in America land, I would not dare approach this brook. This looks like gator territory. No, pups, it's really muddy. Come this way, come on. So just between you and I, Bill, picking up the story again, when I was in my late teens, all I ever wanted to do was work for the BBC, and in particular the pop network, Radio 1. I had no idea how to get there. No idea of how it could become my living. No idea if I would get there. It seemed the unachievable. It was intense. And I didn't know this word at the time, but this really would describe how I felt. Sehnsucht. It eventually paid off because it was such an intense driver to succeed. And I feel the same way about this podcast. And Sehnsucht is what I feel for travel. I was thinking about this word, you see, Bill, because I do have a yearning, a real yearning to learn and be and see. And look, I'll have to find the audio bit now, but when last week's guest Thomas Nicolon said what I'm about to play you, it was almost like he was speaking directly to me in an inspirational one life live it way. I think of all my guests, Thomas Nicolon certainly displays, certainly talks in a way of Sehnsucht.
I just want to feel alive. I want to feel like life is not passing me by. I would have loved to do that in life, but this happened and that happened. Oh, my dream what would have been to do that. I was like, Thomas, promise yourself that when you get to that age, you're gonna be like, my dream was that and I did it. I want to feel alive. I want to make the most out of this short life. I love what I do so much.
I know.
I'm in the middle of the forest searching for bonobos or gorillas or running from elephants or whatever, and I'm like, this is so awesome. I want people to know.
I may be straying slightly from the true Sehnsucht, I don't know, but thank you very much for that. That was a learning, wasn't it, pups? Yeah. Sehnsucht. Say it after me. Sehnsucht. You need to work on that. Too many words now. Too many. So Bill, thank you. I doff my hat to you. Today you are our teacher. Sehnsucht. Oh, I love it. The wonderful thing about Tiggers, were you doing it too? Start again, rewind. The wonderful thing about creativity, or being creative, is just not knowing where the story will go next. We've been there already today with Christopher Parsons, the learned Lord Parsons of Pixelshire, who's proved, and the next letter supports this, that going places with an open heart and mind reaps many pictorial rewards. What was that expression from India that Jason Florio introduced us to earlier this year? Don't try to understand it, just accept it. Go with wide eyes like you're a kid in a candy shop for the first time. So I do like the idea of sometimes not really knowing how the next week's show is going to pan out. There's always a faint plan, I want you to know. Sometimes more than a faint plan, but otherwise, often the shows are just waiting to be composed. Just like a picture of a scene that hasn't unfolded. Often, well, completely helped by your letters and often by words that are said within interviews. So, as you're hearing this show, I'll either be coming to a close in terms of having spent time with Valérie Jardin in Paris on her Candid Street workshop, or I'll be at home in the studio piecing the whole recording together, because next week's show should be our Parisian special. Anyway, on this theme of never knowing quite what's around the corner, this from Reed Gidez. Hello, Neil. I've just finished listening to episode number 488 in your bit with community member Graham Harries talking about urban exploration. As you know from my Route 66 travels, I do. And I'm intensely envious because that is a place I really want to go to. I really want to adventure Route 66. I'm a fan of rust and dust, he says, and anything old that has a human handprint on it, and urban exploring fits neatly within this category, of course. I understand the importance of protecting locations because that was part of our conversation, wasn't it? I asked him where a location was, and I don't think he felt comfortable to share it for obvious reasons. Because as Reed says, I don't ever share exact locations in order to protect the site from those explorers, in inverted commas, bent on adding their own touches to the site. I suppose you mean like graffiti, or even worse, just wrecking the place. But I'll make an exception for this location I'm sharing with you now, as you actually need permission. And you have to make a contribution in order to get anywhere near exploring the site. The place is the abandoned immigrant hospital complex on Ellis Island, you see, harder to get to as well, in New York Harbor. The hospital was in operation for 50 years, from 1901 to 1951, and when closed, they pretty much walked away from this place and just let it go. The National Park Service now controls the main part of the island, and the Save Ellis Island organisation offers hard hat tours that include very small group tours designed for photographers. Hallelujah! I try to visit every other year, and so I always find new things to document. The website is, I tell you what, I'll put the website, since you've given me the link here. It's, saveellisisland.org, but I'll put it on the show page today. There's a link there, and you can book a photo tour. Tripods are allowed. Here are some images from my last visit in 2023, and I suppose these might also fit with a relic assignment from June. I love the show and being an extra miler, and I look forward to my weekly time with you and your guests for enlightening conversations and ideas. All the best, Reed. And Reed, I will pop your Instagram link on the show page as well today, next to the pictures that you have sent in. Now, I do know of this place because in episode 427, the iconic fine art photographer Stephen Wilkes, no less, talked about Ellis Island as part of our chat that we had, and some of the more spooky moments he's had there himself. It was an interview I actually recorded quite late at night. I remember recording the interview because it was dark outside, and there was a certain sort of spookiness when I made my way back from the office that night. Oh, look behind you kind of thing. You know me, Reed, I'm a proper turnip. But I love the pictures. There is a sense, and I mean this as a positive sense. For me, there's a real sense of melancholy. Oh, look at that. Can you hear it? Oh, no. Oh, that's a shame. My microphone wasn't quite close enough. A goose just taking off. The lovely noise they make as they come along the river. Oh, just missed it, pups. Never mind. But yeah, there was a sense of melancholy for a place that told stories that weren't always born of kindness. Remembering my chat with Stephen, and having read more about the history of the place, I can understand why it's become something you return to. I really can, because it's fascinating. A place like that, open to photographers to enjoy. Oh, marvellous. Those pictures then, they are on the show page, and as per your mention of Graham Harries, well, one of the places he mentions within his urbex adventures when we were chatting was, I suppose, the privilege. It might sound like a strange choice of a word when you think about the horrors of this place and those that did lose their lives as a result of what happened. But he talked about the privilege of photographing at Chernobyl. And I suppose by coincidence, in the final part of this show, my conversation with Quintin Lake now, Chernobyl is a place we return to within our chat. But we'll start with the topic of travel.
Quintin, your passport is very well stamped in terms of the adventures that you've made walking and seeing and architecture. I'm going to pick out a few in particular that are on your website. But what is your fascination with travel? What drives it?
Wow, such a profound question. I mean, I think it's curiosity and it's understanding yourself and who we are when you're in an environment that's uncertain. And maybe that uncertainty and that innocence about an environment makes it easier to see things with curiosity. I guess that's the one thing, and the overarching thing is I'm often interested in quite empty landscapes, kind of deserts, or these pure, like sort of, it's almost an imagination, isn't it? As a child, you imagine what the Arctic's going to be like, you imagine what a desert's going to be like, you imagine what a jungle's going to be like. And then it's interesting to compare that childhood imagination with the reality. And I think that's a really fascinating thing to explore that difference. And I feel more alive and aware of my own feelings when I travel. I must say, I feel post-perimeter, I feel that less because I feel I can see that even in my local hill here in England. But when I was younger, I definitely did equate the exotic with inspiration.
I want to talk about some of, we could talk about landscapes, we can talk about architecture. Do you mind if I mix them all into one?
Please. Well, I see them as the same. I see them as sort of geometrical ways of looking at the world. And I think my eye is the same whether I'm looking at a building or a landscape.
Well, it doesn't get much more geometrical than a pyramid. And this is something I looked forward to seeing. It was something from my childhood I was really looking forward to seeing. I got to see it when I was about 25, 26, maybe a little bit younger, at a time when you were allowed to go into the pyramids. I think you are again now. I think that's permitted, but for a while it was not permitted.
That's right, yeah.
You've made photographs. When you made your photographs, was that the exterior only, or did you go in as well?
It was just the exterior only, yeah.
And
yeah.
So why the pyramids?
Well, I've been to Egypt a few times to do desert trekking trips. So my mind was tuned into these big expanses. And then it's just, it's the ultimate sort of Platonic shape. It's the ultimate architecture, isn't it? The pyramid. It's this sort of timeless shape where it's this, and then and then I was also really struck by it because it's a most extraordinary mega city Egypt of architecture, which looks pretty similar to the modern architecture and just goes on kind of terrifyingly large extent into the distance. And then you have, so that's quite geometrical. And what I wanted to do is play with the triangular shape with the mega city in the background and try and show a relationship between the two things because they seem like almost different worlds.
One thing that really struck me when I was standing next to it, the huge size, clearly.
Yeah.
And yes, the mega city behind it, when you tend to think, I thought at the time, well, these things will be right out there in the middle of
That's
nowhere.
what I thought too, yeah.
And you won't see anything else but a camel, perhaps, in a cliche stance. But no, the mega city is clearly visible, and you've got that as a composition in one of your photographs. The other thing that occurred to me was just how huge these steps were, because it is not. I know people know this, but it's not a. Once upon a time, I think it was, but it's not a structure that's smooth.
Yeah, as you say, I think once upon a time it was smooth, but I think the facing stone has been removed to do other things. Yeah, yes, the scale it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? And then I really like going to very, very, very well photographed locations like this, which are almost in our imagination again as childhood. I could give my son and ask him to draw the pyramid, and he could do it, and he'd probably do the camel, and there's an image, and then it's kind of trying to find something maybe a little bit fresh about what it is that I'm really, really interested in. And for me, it's the scale, the texture, and also cropping in quite tight so it loses that sense of scale, but yet you can still recognize it for what it was and all the endeavor thousands of years ago to build it.
I am somebody taken by titles, and when I found Spaces of Fear, I thought, this sounds right up my wheelhouse. It really does. Why are the places or the spaces in Bicester and Hayford, why are they, and again, I'll link to this on the show page today, but why are they spaces of fear?
Well, I love throughout history, it seems, whether it was the Romans, the Normans, the Vikings, whether it was Henry VIII, is that our island is surrounded by these massive bits of military infrastructure, which are essentially born out of fear, aren't they? They're born out of fear of invasion of the other coming and attacking and destroying us. And then when that threat is no longer there, whether that's the Nazis or the Vikings, they become something else. They become this evocative memory of some kind of fear. So that's what this series of work was about. And RAF Bicester, which is now Bicester Motion, it's a heritage motor centre. And I was lucky to be able to photograph it just before it was renovated. It had been mothballed after World War II. So it still has some of the paintings of the pilots, and it was part of Bomber Command. So kind of this necessary, but has elements of horror and tragedy about the whole thing, and yet it's also kind of very beautiful because the paint is peeling. It has these pastel colors. After 70 years, it has this kind of beautiful aesthetic. So I liked it. It's multivalent meanings. You can appreciate it aesthetically, but then it also has this kind of horror to it. And the whole thing is designed so bits could be bombed or destroyed and it could still work. So it has like a power center, then it has an emergency power center. They all have double blast walls. And then the hangars themselves were to contain the bombers that went and destroyed much of the continent. So that's what I meant by Spaces of Fear. And then RAF Hayford is the similar theme, but in the Cold War. So that was where the nuclear bombers would have been if there was a threat of attack in the Cold War. And again, it's interesting to me because my wife is Czech and she was brought up at school that they would learn how the horrible imperialists would bomb them, and they put the gas masks on every day at school, and that's how they were brought up and learned to be. And then in a way for us it was the same. So it's these two sides of fear. I just find that fascinating, and architecturally the remnants of these things is interesting.
I talk about this, and my other listener will now roll their eyes when I mention Greenham Common. It's a place that I often walk when I'm recording editions of the show. But I share your view of looking at these places, these Cold War places of horror. I'm very fortunate to have been able to get into some of the silos when the fences weren't quite so secure. They are now. You wouldn't get anywhere close to them now. But they are just, when you go inside one of these places, there is an extraordinary feeling of dread, doom.
Yes.
Maybe that's I do have an over-imaginative.
I think I'm the same on the perimeter. Someone put me up in a Cold War bunker, which he now lives in, and it was down like a 50-meter corridor, and it's got 4 meters of concrete. It's absolutely silent, and the only sound is the blood pumping around your head, and it almost does seem like the sound of fear, and you kind of project all these obsessions in it. It's really very strange. I mean, but bunkers and all that kind of architecture is really interesting.
What is this place? Where was that?
It's called Burvey Brow Research Station. I think they're called the rotor stations, which I believe stands for the reuse of the old radar. So after World War II, the radar stations were converted to be early warning defense systems in case of Soviet nuclear attack. And a couple of them are open to the public. I think Clevedon Hatch is one, and they're all architecturally identical. And they all have you access it by a building that's designed to look like a kind of farmhouse, and then the bunker goes under the ground. It's still very, very bizarre. But I mean, you just look it up. The rotor bunkers, really interesting.
How extraordinary! Underneath a farmhouse.
Well, it's designed to look like a bungalow that doesn't look military. In that farmhouse was the gatehouse, and then you access the bunker itself down a tunnel.
Extraordinary. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Chernobyl, and I was lamenting the fact that I may never get to go there in my lifetime. I hope I will have an opportunity. And I know for some it's, okay, you want to go on the tourist trail with Chernobyl. I feel, because I have such a fascination for history, and it's something that happened during my childhood, or early adulthood. It was in the 80s, wasn't it, where it all happened. That I feel, it almost feels a bit like a pilgrimage. And I wonder whether that felt the same for you. You're 21 years after Chernobyl project that you made.
Yeah, so I went with Paul Dobrashnik, who's an architectural historian, and we both went for different reasons. And that was in 2007. So it definitely wasn't on the full tourist trail then. So there's 2 exclusion zones. And when we went, there was some bribery was going on to get through the 2 exclusion zones. And we had to carry a Geiger counter, and the whole shoot had to be done within 5 hours, and we weren't supposed to step on vegetation. So I wasn't quite sure how much of this is theatrics and how much is real. But I think some of the radiation stays more in the vegetation. But it was incredibly powerful experience, because it's like a wildlife park, because no people have been there. So there's lots of foxes and animals, and all the trees grow through the streets, and then that diffuses the light in all the buildings. And then once the reactor blew, because the country there was in such economic hardship, people would break break through the security fence and steal anything, including like the marble in the hotel on the wall. So you've got these two traumas. You've got the invisible radiation. You've also got the trauma of it being looted. So people would like steal radioactive toilet seats because they didn't have a toilet seat. And then it was a model Soviet city. So it had luxurious things like supermarkets and fancy hotels. And the Soviets used to take foreign dignitaries to Pripyat to show them what the city was like, what the town was like. I mean, I would highly recommend seeing it. It's the most resonant place I've been in. Obviously now, when the Russians have recently been there and occupied it, it must have another level of trauma to it.
I wonder what it will look like when we eventually can get back in and see it. What they've done with it.
Yeah, it's probably pretty awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the photos that particularly resonate with me are the ones that fascinate me, that draw me in. It plays really with your thoughts about how nature has reclaimed the city. There's one particular picture with a tree just growing up through the floor with a solitary chair next to it, and it's a very bizarre picture for that reason.
I think it's probably my favourite picture I've ever taken. Yeah, it's the terrace of Hotel Policia, and there's a silver birch tree just growing out of what looks completely improbable, and someone's left a chair there, probably having a cigarette or something, and it's totally bizarre. And then the light just lit it beautifully, and then in the far distance there's the hammer and sickle on the building in the distance.
A place that you've been to that I went to many years ago in the early 90s, not so long after the dictator was deposed, Ceausescu was deposed, was Ceausescu's palace in Bucharest in Romania, which is such an imposing building. I remember at the time, when you talk about having to bribe your way into places, it was at a time where you could not go into it. I think maybe a BBC ID badge helped. I think possibly the 5 or 6 packets of huge great packets of cigarettes probably helped more. But it is such an incredible place, an imposing place, and particularly when you're told that Ceausescu never wanted to see a car driving up one of the avenues in front of him, that they had to change the direction of traffic, you begin to understand why there was such a loathing for the man.
Yes.
It's an incredible place, isn't it?
It is, and also because I studied architecture, and it is interesting just how futile it is when you get these megalomaniacs trying to just make something bigly, how just kind of stupid it is. You know, you take an idea of something that's reasonable, a palace, and you just sort of magnify it just so it's larger. It doesn't become better or more. It just becomes sort of chilling and pointless. And it doesn't necessarily have any more merit, but it's interesting as a parable of folly, isn't it?
I was fascinated by the fact that you're just as intrigued by infrastructure as you are of these incredible structures that are made. I was listening earlier on to a radio program today, funny enough, where the host was suggesting that there's no way we would build cathedrals like we used to years ago. It would just take too much planning and there'd never be the budget for them. But that aside, infrastructure, I found a really interesting project. You are just as interested by a viaduct, it seems, as a beautiful structure that's been, designed by Sir Christopher Wren.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely agree with what you're saying there. To me, the modern cathedrals, the modern Wrens are the nuclear power stations, the bridges. I just love all that, and I know there are national security issues on it, but to me, these nuclear power stations that generate all this power that allows us to talk now is kind of a miraculous thing. And I never quite understood why they aren't sort of celebrated more architecturally, why you don't get the greatest architects of our age designing the shell for them, because they're often these huge things in the landscape. So they have this weird sort of, the engineers are designing all the tubes and the pipes, and then maybe a civic engineer is just told, build a box around that so we can't see it. So it has this strength, and its look denies its use. It's sort of hiding what's inside it, and I find all that really fascinating, because you obviously can't hide a huge building like that in the landscape.
I'm going to ask a why for the first time ever during an interview to ask 2 why questions. This time I want to apply why to your work as somebody who's fascinated by landscape and architecture. Why? What is it about these places, these cathedrals, whether it's Dungeness or wherever?
Well, I think it tells us about our values. I mean, if if you believe in architecture, you have to believe that it's a manifestation in stone and steel of our desires and beliefs at a given point in time. Whether that's, in the pyramid, or whether you're talking about a modern, like a pylon or a power station, it's trying to wrestle with that, trying to portray that as a photo, because I think that's what I believe it is. It tells us about ourselves.
And my thanks today to Quintin Lake for being my guest on the show. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and want to walk a little further together, then that's what the Extra Mile edition's all about. You go the extra mile for me, so I go the extra mile for you. It's our Patreon channel where you can help support the show. And this week on the Extra Mile, I talk about, in the new series of reflections, I talk about perfectionism. Are you a perfectionist? Do you find things easy to finish or even start? And we muse over the perfectionist trap. Plus, Quintin Lake is back for 3 more stops.
On this week's Extra Mile.
So most building shoots, if I follow my pace timer, I walk 11 kilometers to photograph one building. So I'm essentially circling and circling with different lights and different focal lengths. And then as I get to know the building, the images get better. So normally when I'm editing the first half, I'm binning. I believe with that comment that the camera looks both ways when you are photographing people. It's your energy is reflected in the subject, and then that's definitely a community activity. And then we need the community to give us feedback and to understand our pictures, and we share them with people, and that becomes a community action. So I would say it's a hybrid. So when you're creating the images, it is mostly solitary.
If you'd like to hear a little more of the photo walk each week, head to the website and click Extra Mile or the orange support the show button. Your help keeps us walking here week after week. That sounds like a very easy line just to deliver off some notes. But it's true. It really is true. Met a friend of mine recently who works at the BBC, who has a considerable podcast of many, many hundreds of thousands of listeners, I think. Definitely close to 100,000. And I remember our conversation. He said to me, I don't want to be one of those podcasters that's like Oliver Twist holding out his hat saying, please support me. I sort of shifted uncomfortably as I said, no. Rather pleased that he'd never heard one of my podcasts. But that's what helps us, that's what keeps us here. It's, I know pups. I know, and the cows, they're agreeing with you if you just sort of moo over there as well. It's what keeps us here, isn't it? Without you and your support, we certainly wouldn't be able to produce this kind of show week after week. I suspect my friend is not listening with his hundreds of thousands of listeners. Come on, pups, this way. Our PS to the show is still to come, but first we need a play-out song. A record to make a few final frames to or think about what's been said today. This is... It's a band I like a lot, actually. I've played them a few times. Lewis Island, a song called Escape This Town, which isn't strictly about walking, I know. But I love the feel of this. It pushes me along the path at sunset. It's that kind of song, I think, which I may well need this coming October. I do hope we'll be making that journey. I do. If we do the Isle of Wight walk, I'll need a lot of pushing. There's some decent high cliffs to walk over, I can tell you.
The light is fading fast. From this old town we gotta go. Our bags are packed, so what we waiting for? There's no point in delaying what we both already know. Escape this time with me. Escape this time with me. We could rent a room and watch the stars dance round the moon. Fall asleep to the sounds of the sea. With you right by my side, it's such a sweet life. Escape this time with me. Escape this time with me. Nowhere else to be. Escape this time.
this island and escape this town. Fabulous. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community with your support. For the price of I don't care, I'm just going to be brazen now. For the price of a fancy cup of Starbucks something or other brands clearly available per month, you can make a whole difference to this show. You really can. A few mentions for those who really do smooth the voyage for me. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT. Without you, Neil, we could not do this. Really. You know that. I can see you nodding. My thanks also to Andrea Gilpin, who keeps a watchful eye over Instagram, as does our friend Kelly Mitchell for Facebook, and to Michael Mixon, who helps with show research from time to time. Right, a postscript for the show today. It is from Rebecca Solnit. Rebecca Solnit is a writer, a historian, a lifelong walker whose book, Wanderlust, A History of Walking, which I must get, actually, now that I've read a bit more about it, explores how walking shapes the way that we think, the way we connect, I know, pups, and experience the world. But no, she doesn't say anything about you, pups. Were you trying to get in on the act? But I needed a PS that would fit with this idea of walking and the mindfulness of walking. So this one is a beautiful reminder that walking isn't just about distance. It's about slowing down enough to let your mind wander alongside your footsteps. A subject and a pace, really, that's often the conversation of this show. From Rebecca Solnit. I like walking because it's slow. And I suspect that the mind, like the feet, work at about 3 miles an hour.
What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides. Thoughts can be cruel, they're not mine to hold. The space unravels when you let go.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.